Welcome to the Midweek Motivation Podcast, where we bring practical help for your faith and life. Here's today's episode. That feeling of overwhelm you get sometimes can be the very thing that propels you to your potential if you learn how to take advantage of it. Hey, my name is Gabe Kolstad, and I'm excited to be here with you in this episode of Midweek Motivation with the Westside podcast. And I want you to know that a lot of the reason why people start to feel overwhelmed or overloaded is really related to a lack of something called fresh starts. It's because we bring into, every day like a suitcase full of all the yesterdays. And if you think about this for a second, we're moving into fall. And I want to talk about how fall is for fresh starts. But we're moving into fall, and you might be bringing your summer with you. You might be bringing your summer and your spring with you. You might be bringing your summer and your spring and your winter with you. And it might not have been great all that time. You might have some bitterness in your suitcase, you might have some disappointments in there. You could have some feelings of failure or doubt in there, some conflict in there. And you're dragging this suitcase into the new day. And, if you're not careful, you're just going to start shoving more stuff from today in there. And then tomorrow's going to be hard. And so what I'm trying to say here, and I think what we all need to listen to, is that overwhelm is a trigger to reset. It's a trigger for a fresh start. And we're going to talk about how to do that well today. This past Sunday at Westside, Pastor Steve Barker talked a little bit about this and kind of how to reset, how to get back on top of it and get ready for your next season and success. And he talked about getting your rhythm back, really. And one of his main points was don't just keep adding. There's got to be a time when you remove some things. And I want to suggest that there's got to be a time when you kind of can push the reset button. Fall is for fresh starts. And, it reminds me of this story of my family. We went camping a number of years ago, and we had all this stuff hooked up to this little SUV that we had. And we had a pop-up tent trailer that was an older one, and so it was kind of heavy. And so when we hooked it onto the car, it sort of sagged. I don't know if you've ever seen that happen, but maybe you've got a car where you put a trailer on it that was a little heavier than it was supposed to be. That happened to our car. But we didn't stop there. Oh, no. We added 5 bicycles to the top of that pop-up tent trailer. We put coolers and totes full of food, and I think we just started putting just heavy rocks on top of everything just to weigh it down even more. I mean, we had everything. There's suitcases, there's kids, there's snacks, there's toys, there's all this junk on our car. And what happened was we were climbing the hill in the Coast Range, headed to the mountains near the Pacific Ocean, and our car broke down. It was just too much for it to handle. And I think a lot of times that's me and that's you. We're just like, man, it's yesterday's on there and last disappointing season's on there. And, if you're somebody who's had to lead through a hard season, you've got that on top of it. If your marriage has been tough in this time, that's there, and parenting and everything else that people deal with. And so here's the problem is that if you add to your disappointment, frustration, and bitterness and fear, if you look back at this last season and you think about how the world was different, and, we kind of might have all gotten a little bit into an excuse mindset that could be carrying over into this season. I mean, if you think about this for a second, a lot of people got used to not getting out of the house in the morning. And so sometimes it's hard. It's hard now. If you want, maybe your company's doing this thing where everybody's like, oh, back to the office all of a sudden. And you're going, oh my goodness, that disrupts my rhythm. Everything, is messed up again. Maybe for you, you've been one of those ones like me who's walked into a restaurant and you look around at all this seating that's available, except that it's not available because there aren't enough staff at the restaurant, to open up the whole restaurant. I think we get used to some limitations, and we could be carrying some of those things in. And if we don't get past this, the overwhelm is really just going to overwhelm us. But if we can use this trigger of overwhelm or overload to just go pause, let's reset, let's have a fresh start. How do we do this well? Well, I want to tell you a story from the Old Testament book of Joshua. This is an account of the Israelites when they were leaving the wilderness and they were moving into the promised land. God had told Moses, I want to have you move my people from captivity, from slavery in Egypt, and I want you to move them to this land that I have for them. This special people in this special place. And God had this vision for people that they could live in a place that he had carved out for them. And they could live a life of worship and freedom and love and blessing. And so he wanted Moses to move people out of slavery in Egypt into this promised land. And Moses, did his thing, which was to lead the people out of Egypt. And then he handed it over to Joshua. And Joshua was tasked with moving the people now into the promised land from the wilderness. And I don't know about you, this last few years for me feels a little bit like the wilderness. As a pastor, a spiritual leader in this time, a lot of change, kind of a lot of uncertainty. And we're seeing that season sort of change and seeing some momentum, seeing some new things. So it feels like there's an opportunity for us to move into a new place, just like Joshua took the Israelites into a new place. But he did it with a really cool fresh start. And I want you to see what he did. I'll tell you a quick story, a little bit of background. In Joshua chapter 2, Joshua sends out some spies into this quote unquote promised land to go like, okay, what's it like? And those spies come back and well, there's giants there, but don't be scared because they're scared of us, they say. And so Joshua is, feeling filled with courage, and the whole group goes, yeah, let's go get them. Let's go do it. But they had to cross a river first. And so God had to miraculously dry up this river so that 2 million people could cross this river during flood stage on dry ground and not get stuck and not have, everybody drown. And it all happened. And in Joshua chapter 3, verse 5, right before they were going to cross the river into the new land, Joshua told the people, he said, "Purify yourselves, for tomorrow the Lord will do great wonders among you." And I think sometimes we lack that sense of anticipation, don't you? Purify yourselves. In other words, set yourselves apart. Make yourselves ready, because tomorrow God's going to do great wonders among you. Have you ever had that thought in your mind, like, what if tomorrow held great wonders for you? What would that look like? What would great wonders look like for you? Kind of hard to think like that if you're dragging around an ever-increasing suitcase of baggage from yesterday and the week before and the month before and the year before and the disappointments of life. And maybe it's time for you to let go. And the way that Joshua helped the children of Israel let go that day, and that little moment of crossing over the river, which was actually a really big moment because they were leaving behind 40 years, check this out, 40 years of delay, detours, disappointment, 40 years of wondering where they were going to get their food, 40 years of people chasing them, of being, attacked by enemies, by bandits, being robbed, all these things, 40 years of that. They were leaving that behind. That was a lot of bitterness, honestly. And instead, they were going to embrace their future. And what happened was they crossed the river, and Joshua said to the people, I want you to gather some stones. I want you to make a monument here. Because he said, in the future, your children are going to ask you, what is this pile of rocks here for? And I want you to tell the story of what God did for you. It was a clear demarcation. It was we were in the wilderness, now we're in the promised land. And for you, I want to encourage you to just pause right now and go, what is the season that I'm transitioning from right now? Yeah, it's summer to fall. We're all going through that. It's a great excuse to go, God, can you put me into a new season? Can you help me get into my new season? Can you help me not drag the past into the present? Can you help me not bring bitterness or baggage into today or tomorrow? And you can say, what are the memorial stones that you want to think about? Just recently had a conversation with our staff at Westside about this, and we had these stones, and I said, on one side of the stone, I want you to think about how has God been faithful to you in this past season? What has he done for you? What's something that God has done for you? Has he shown you his love? Has he shown you his provision? Has he shown you his forgiveness? Has he given you new relationships? Has he given you a peace in your heart? Has he given you a purpose, a sense of purpose in life? What has he done? How has he shown his faithfulness to you? And then on the other side of the stone, I said, I want you to think about and write down, what is this new season going to require of you? And what can you commit yourself to? Because I believe God wants us to move from one season to the next with the freedom of releasing what that past season looked like and what it included, the good and the bad. Release that. It's yesterday. It's over. It's past. And let's move into the new season. You can reset. Fall is for fresh starts. It doesn't have to be Groundhog's Day, a replay of the day before and the day before and the day before. I want to encourage you to be fully present today and in this next season. I want to encourage you to dream big about what God might use you for and might do in your life, in your career, in your family, in your spiritual growth, in your journey on earth, and in your whole life altogether. What might he do in this season? How could you make yourself ready for it? By pushing that reset button, by going, I'm going to cross over from one season to the next. I'm going to remember what God did faithfully for me in this season, but I'm not going to stay in that season. I'm going to move forward, and I'm going to commit myself to whatever is required of me to have a great next season. I hope you'll join me as we flip over into fall. Fall is for fresh starts, and I hope this little encouragement can make a difference in your day and in your week. One way you can take a next step is to join us as we kick off a brand new series for the fall here at Westside called Raising Resilience. It's going to be all about how instead of criticizing the next generation, we can become their champions. We can help them succeed. This is for you. This is for me. This is for everyone who knows anyone younger than us, that we can become the people that help the next generation to succeed. I hope you'll be with us this weekend at Westside. See you then. We hope you enjoyed this episode of Midweek Motivation. To make sure you don't miss any content in the future, please subscribe, share, and if you enjoyed this, give us a like, and consider popping by a Westside service some weekend. You can find out more at westsidecommunitychurch.com.